The red emergency beacon flashed across every screen in the Galactic Council chamber. High Chancellor Vexter slammed his forearms against the crystalline podium as another explosion echoed through the communication feeds from the Warzone 17. Star systems burned in the last cycle, he growled, his reptilian features twisted in frustration. The Kethmori and Zillinari fleets are tearing apart entire sectors. Our best mediators have failed. Around the circular chamber, representatives from dozens of species shifted nervously. The war between the insectoid Kethmori and the energy-based Zillinari had raged for 3 standard years, consuming resources and threatening trade routes across the galaxy. What about the wise ones of Centauri? Suggested Ambassador Thek, her blue skin shimmering with anxiety. Rejected our terms before we finished speaking. The neutral zone arbitrators. Both sides accused them of bias within minutes. High Chancellor Vexter Stale lashed in anger. We've tried logic matrices, honor codes, territorial divisions, resource-sharing agreements. Nothing works. These species have been enemies for so long, they've forgotten why they started fighting. In the back of the chamber, a small figure raised her hand. The other delegates barely noticed until she spoke up in clear galactic standard. Excuse me, sir. Earth would like to offer assistance. The chamber fell silent. High Chancellor Vexter's large yellow eyes focused on the human representative, a small bipedal creature in a simple blue uniform. Earth, he consulted his data pad. You're the species from the 3rd planet in the Sol system, correct? The ones who only achieved faster-than-light travel last year. That's right, sir. I'm Ambassador Park Sujin, and this is Captain Kim Hyun of the Earth Diplomatic Corps. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Several delegates exchanged glances that clearly said, these primitives think they can solve what we cannot. Captain Kim Hyun stepped forward, his calm demeanor contrasting with the chaos around them. We understand both species have rejected all formal mediation attempts. Perhaps a different approach might work. Different how? Chancellor Vexter's voice carried barely concealed skepticism. Well, Park Sujin smiled. What if we started with dinner? The silence stretched for several heartbeats before nervous laughter broke out among the delegates. Dinner. Chancellor Vexter's voice rose an octave. Species are dying out there, and you want to have a meal. Captain Kim Hyun remained unfazed. Sometimes the best conversations happen over food. It's harder to hate someone when you're sharing a table with them. The Kethmori and Zillinari haven't been in the same room for decades without trying to kill each other, protested Ambassador Vekalom. Then maybe that's the problem, Park Sujin replied gently. They've forgotten each other are people. Mean beings. Sentient creatures with families and hopes and fears. The reptilian chancellor leaned back in his chair, studying the 2 humans with new interest. Their ship, the Soul's Pride, sat docked in the station's smallest bay. It was tiny compared to the massive cruisers of the established galactic powers, its hull still showing scorch marks from the journey through hostile space. Your species has no military might, no advanced technology, no reputation for diplomacy. Why should we trust you with our greatest crisis? Captain Kim Haeon exchanged a glance with Park Sujin before answering. Because we're the only ones left who haven't tried. And sometimes, fresh eyes see solutions that experience misses. On the main view screen, another flash lit up the darkness of space as a Kethmori hive ship exchanged fire with a Zillinari energy vessel. The destruction was beautiful and terrible, plasma bolts and biomissiles creating deadly fireworks among the stars. The fighting has reached Sector 7, reported a technician. Civilian evacuation transports are requesting emergency escort. High Chancellor Vexter stared at the humans for a long moment, then at the devastation on the screen. His civilized galaxy was tearing itself apart, and every conventional solution had failed. Very well, he said finally. Earth's diplomatic mission is approved. But understand this, humans, if you fail, if this war spreads further because of your dinner parties, the responsibility falls on your young species. Park Sujin bowed respectfully. We understand the stakes, Chancellor. We won't let you down. As the Soul's Pride powered up its engines and set course for the neutral meeting station, Captain Kim Hyun looked out at the stars ahead. Somewhere in that darkness, 2 ancient enemies waited, their hatred burning as bright as the stars themselves. Think this will actually work? He asked his diplomatic partner. Park Sujin smiled as she reviewed the meal plans they'd prepared. My grandmother always said you can't stay angry at someone who's sharing their grandmother's recipes with you. Let's see if that wisdom works across species. The small human ship jumped to hyperspace, carrying with it the galaxy's last hope. For peace. The neutral station orbited a dead moon, its gleaming hull scarred by decades of failed peace talks. Inside the sterile conference room, two groups sat at opposite ends of a long metal table, glaring at each other with barely contained hatred. The Kethmori delegation looked like walking nightmares to most species. Their cotonous black shells gleamed under the harsh lights, and their compound eyes reflected 1,000 tiny images of their enemies. Clicks and hisses escaped from their mandibles as they communicated in their native tongue. Across from them, the Zillinary representatives appeared as shifting columns of pure energy contained within translucent biosuits. Their forms flickered between blue and white, crackling with barely controlled power. When they spoke, their voices sounded like distant thunder. Between them sat the humans, looking impossibly small and fragile. Engineer Lee Minho adjusted his scanner for the third time, trying not to show his nervousness. The bio readings were fascinating, but the tension in the room could be cut with a knife. Every few minutes, one side would growl or spark at something the other said. "This is pointless," buzzed Hive Speaker Kextri, her mandibles clicking in. "Disgust. The energy thieves have nothing we wish to hear." The lead Zillinary, who called himself Stormwalker Valanox, flared brighter. "Says the species that consumes entire ecosystems like parasites." Cultural specialist Choi Tha-jin quickly stepped between them before the situation could escalate. "Wait, please. Before we discuss territories or treaties, could you help us understand something basic?" Both sides turned their attention to the small human woman, their hostility momentarily replaced by curiosity. "Lee Minho has been studying your biological data," she continued, gesturing to her colleague. "We've discovered something interesting that might surprise you both." The engineer cleared his throat and activated his holographic display. Complex molecular structures floated in the air between the warring delegates. "Your digestive systems," he began, "are remarkably similar, not to each other necessarily, but to ours. You can all process the same basic nutritional compounds." Hive Speaker Kextri's antennae twitched. "What does this matter for peace talks?" "Well, Choi," the Jinn smiled, "on Earth we have a saying, it's hard to hate someone you've shared a meal with. What if, instead of formal negotiations, we started by cooking together?" The silence that followed was deafening. Stormwalker Valanex's energy form pulsed slowly, which Lee Minho had learned indicated deep thought. "You want us to prepare food with them?" The Zillinary's voice crackled with disbelief. "Traditional foods from your homeworlds." Choi nodded. "We've converted one of the station's cargo bays into a kitchen. Real ingredients from both your species, plus some Earth spices that might complement them." Hive Speaker Kextri's compound eyes focused intently on the human. "This is not how diplomacy works." "Maybe that's why diplomacy keeps failing," Captain Kim Hyun said quietly from his seat. "You've tried every formal approach in the galaxy. What do you have to lose by trying something informal?" 3 hours later, the cargo bay had been transformed. Cooking stations lined the walls, each equipped with tools adapted for different physiologies. The air recycling system worked overtime as exotic aromas began to fill the space. Lee Minho watched in fascination as Hive Speaker Kextri demonstrated how her people prepared their traditional protein clusters. Her forearms moved with surprising grace, mixing fermented plant matter with cultivated fungi that glowed soft purple. "The spores must be harvested during the third moon cycle," she explained, her voice losing some of its harsh edge. "My clutch mother taught me this recipe when I was still in my juvenile shell." At the next station, Stormwalker Valanox was creating something that looked like liquid lightning. The Zillinary channeled pure energy through crystalline formations, creating patterns of light that somehow solidified into edible matter. "Energy cooking," he said, noticing Lee Minho's amazement. "We draw power from our sun generators and give it form. This pattern represents the first storm of spring on our homeworld." Choi the Jinn moved between the stations, asking questions and making suggestions. When she offered some Earth's garlic to complement the Kethmori dish, Hive Speaker Kextri initially recoiled. "Trust me," the human said gently, "just a small amount. It won't change your recipe, just ... enhance it." The insectoid being hesitated, then allowed Choi the Jinn to add a tiny portion. The aroma that resulted made even the Zillinary pause in their energy weaving. "That scent," Stormwalker Valanax admitted grudgingly, "reminds me of the crystal gardens of Valinari, your homeworld." Hive Speaker Kextri's antennae perked up. "I have heard the crystal gardens were beautiful before the war." "They were." The Zillinary's light dimmed sadly. "Your people's bioships destroyed them in the third year of fighting." The Kethmori delegate stopped stirring her mixture. I did not know you valued growing things. We thought your species only consumed energy, and we believed you only destroyed, Valenex replied. Your hive ships strip mine planets bare to feed our young, Kextri said defensively. We take only what we need to survive. Lee Minho exchanged glances with Choi the. This was the first real conversation between the species in decades, and it was happening over cooking pots and energy-weavers. As the cooking session continued, more revelations emerged. Both species had creation myths involving nurturing the next generation. Both honored their elders through food traditions. Both had once been peaceful before desperation drove them to war. When they finally sat down to eat, the atmosphere had shifted completely. The formal conference room had been abandoned for a simple circle of chairs in the kitchen. Storm-Walker Valenex tasted the Kethmori protein clusters and his energy form brightened with surprise. This is ... complex. Subtle, I expected only. Crude sustenance. Hive speaker, Kextri carefully absorbed a small portion of the crystallized energy food. Her mandibles clicked in what Lee Minho now recognized as pleasure. It carries memories of your homeworld. How is this possible? All food carries memory, Choi the Jin said softly. That's what makes sharing it so powerful. The holographic star map flickered between the two species, showing contested territories in angry red. High Chancellor Vexter's voice echoed through the communication system from the Galactic Council chambers. The Kepler Nebula mining rights remain the primary issue, he declared. Both species claim ancestral ownership. We need clear territorial boundaries. Ambassador Jung So-young sat quietly in the corner of the negotiation room, watching as the alien diplomats immediately launched into familiar arguments. Charts and data streams filled the air as each side presented evidence of their historical claims. The Kethmori established the first colonies in that sector 800 years ago, buzzed the insectoid representative, his mandibles clicking rapidly. Energy signature analysis proves zillenary presence dates back over a millennium. Stormwalker Valenex countered, his biosuit crackling with agitation. Jung So-young noticed something the other mediators had missed. Every time territorial disputes came up, both species became more defensive, more angry. But during yesterday's cooking session, they had been almost ... sad. She caught the eye of historian Otewu, who was documenting the proceedings. With a subtle gesture, she signaled him to join her outside the main negotiation area. The territories aren't the real problem, she whispered as they stepped into the station's observation deck. Through the massive viewport, the dead moon below seemed to mirror the lifeless tone of the talks. What do you mean? Otewu adjusted his recording device. They've been fighting over those systems for years. Think about yesterday, when they talked about their homeworlds, their voices changed. There was pain there, not just anger. Jung So-young pulled up her personal notes on her tablet. Hive speaker Kextri mentioned crystal gardens being destroyed. Stormwalker talked about colony ships that never returned home. Otewu's eyes widened with understanding. You think they're not fighting over what they want, but grieving what they've lost. Exactly. And you can't heal grief with territory maps. Back in the negotiation room, the arguments had grown louder. The Galactic Council mediators were pulling up trade agreements and resource allocation charts. But both alien species seemed to be talking past each other. Jung So-young re-entered the room and quietly approached the center of the discussion area. Excuse me, she said, her voice cutting through the technical jargon. Could I try something different? The room fell silent. High Chancellor Vexter's image on the main screen showed obvious frustration. Ambassador Jung, we need to focus on concrete solutions. With respect, Chancellor, I think we've been solving the wrong problem. She gestured for Otewu to join her. Instead of talking about territories, what if we talked about memories? Hive speaker, Kextri's compound eyes focused on her. What purpose would that serve? Sometimes the best way to move forward is to honor what we've left behind. Jung So-young activated a different holographic display, showing not star charts, but an empty circle of soft light. Otewu specializes in cultural preservation. He's helped species across the galaxy document stories that might otherwise be forgotten. The historian stepped forward, his demeanor gentle and non-threatening. Every species has stories about who they were before the conflicts began. Would you be willing to share some of yours? Stormwalker Valenex's energy form pulsed slowly. Our stories are for our own kind. Not to judge or analyze, Otewu assured him, just to listen. Sometimes sharing memories helps us understand why they matter so much. There was a long pause. Then Hive speaker Kextri clicked her mandibles. Thoughtfully, Our hive songs tell of the great pollination when our ancestors first learned to nurture growing things instead of just consuming them. Tell us about it, Jung So-young encouraged, settling into a chair. The formal conference table had been pushed aside, replaced by a circle of seats that Ote-woo had quietly arranged. The insectoid delegate's voice took on a different quality, less harsh and more rhythmic. Long before we reached the stars, our people lived in vast underground cities. We had learned to farm fungal forests, to tend gardens that glowed with bioluminescent beauty. The younglings would sing as they worked, their voices harmonizing through the tunnel networks. As she spoke, her fellow Kethmori delegates began to add details, their clicks and buzzers creating an alien but oddly musical backdrop. Storm-Walker, Valinix watched intently, his energy form shifting through colors Jung So-young had never seen before. When the Kethmori finished, he spoke quietly. We too were gardeners, in our way. The Zillinari cultivated energy patterns in the aurora fields of our homeworld. We would dance with the solar winds, weaving light into forms that could sustain life for generations. Ote-woo leaned forward. What happened to these traditions? The mood in the room shifted. Stormwalker Valinix dimmed noticeably. The great solar storm of the 47th cycle. Our homeworld star became unstable. We had to flee, abandoning everything we had built. Hive speaker Kextri's antennae drooped. The fungal plague came to our world around the same time. Our underground cities became death traps. We also became refugees. Jung So-young felt the pieces clicking into place. You both lost your homes at almost the same time. The Kepler Nebula was the first place we found that could support our kind. Stormwalker Valinix continued. We began building new aurora gardens there, and our scouts discovered fungal spores that could grow in the nebula's unique conditions. Hive speaker Kextri added. We established emergency colonies. The silence that followed was different from the hostile quiet of earlier negotiations. This was recognition. Ote-woo spoke gently. So when you encountered each other there, we saw invaders threatening our survival. Both species said almost simultaneously, then looked at each other in surprise. Jung So-young nodded. Two traumatized peoples, both desperate to rebuild what they'd lost, meeting in the one place that offered hope. We never knew, Stormwalker Valinix said slowly, that your people had also suffered such losses. Hive speaker Kex3's mandibles clicked softly. In our fear, we saw enemies, not fellow refugees. The holographic star map still showed the disputed territories in red, but now the room saw them differently. Not prizes to be won, but remnants of dreams both species desperately needed to rebuild. Perhaps, Jung So-young suggested quietly, the question isn't who owns what, but how two peoples who've lost everything might help each other create something new. The breakthrough came at 3 in the morning. Station time. Dr. Kong Ji-hoi had been reviewing hours of recorded conversations when she noticed something that made her sit up straight in her chair. Ambassador Jung, she called across the quiet research bay. You need to see this. Jung So-young looked up from her own reports, rubbing tired eyes. The peace talks had stalled again that afternoon when Stormwalker Valinix had abruptly left the room after what seemed like a simple question about energy reserves. What did you find? Jung So-young moved to look over the psychologist's shoulder at the holographic display showing conversation patterns. Watch this section from today's session. Dr. Kong Ji-hoi highlighted a segment where Hive Speaker had asked about Zillinary power consumption rates. The translation showed straightforward words, but the underlying biometric data told a different story. See how Valinix's energy signature spikes here. Dr. Kong Ji-hoi pointed to the readings. His translator shows him asking for clarification, but his biosigns suggest he felt attacked or insulted. Jung So-young frowned. But Kextri was just asking about technical specifications. Nothing hostile. That's exactly the problem. Dr. Kong Ji-hoi pulled up more data streams. I've been analyzing their communication patterns for days. The Kethmori ask direct questions because that's how they show interest and respect in their culture. But the Zillinari interpret direct questions about their capabilities as challenges to their competence. The implications hit Jung So-young. Immediately, they've been accidentally insulting each other for decades. Worse than that, look at this pattern from the Zillinari side. Dr. Kong Ji-hoi switched to a different conversation segment. When Valinix offers suggestions, he speaks in abstract metaphors because that's how his people show wisdom. But watch Kex3's stress indicators. The readings showed the insectoid's biometrics spiking every time the Zillinari spoke in flowery language. She thinks he's being deliberately vague to hide something, Jung So-young realized, and he thinks she's being deliberately rude by demanding concrete details. Dr. Kong Jihai leaned back in her chair. They're not actually disagreeing about the issues. They're misreading each other's intentions. The next morning, Dr. Kong Jihai requested a private meeting with both The station's smaller conference room felt less formal than the main negotiation chamber, with its circular table and softer lighting. Before we continue with territorial discussions, she began, I'd like to try a communication exercise. Stop! Valinex's biosuit flickered with cautious energy. What manner of exercise? I want each of you to describe your perfect day at home, but in the other species' communication style. Dr. Kong Jihai activated a holographic display showing cultural communication patterns. Hive speaker, Kextri, please describe a perfect day using metaphors and abstract concepts, the way Zillinari prefer. The insectoid delegate's mandibles clicked uncertainly. This is not how my people speak. Try anyway. Just as an experiment. Kextri was quiet for a long moment, then began hesitantly. A perfect day would be like the harmony of the deep tunnels, where young voices echo with the wisdom of ancient songs, where the light of growing things illuminates paths both known and yet to be discovered. Dr. Kong Jihainet's Stormwalker Valinex's energy form brightening with interest. How did that make you feel, Valinex? Surprisingly respectful, thoughtful. I had not realized Kethmori could speak with such ... poetry. Now your turn. Dr. Kong Jihai said to the Zillinari, describe your perfect day using direct, specific language like the Kethmori prefer. Valinex's form flickered uncertainly. This feels blunt, crude. Try it anyway. The energy being paused, then spoke, in clipped, precise tones completely different from his usual flowing speech. A perfect day involves successful energy cultivation resulting in 47.3% efficiency gains. Completion of storm dancing protocols with 0 system failures. Achievement of Aurora Garden expansion targets in exactly 4.7 standard hours. Hive speaker Kextri's antennae perked up. That is ... clear. Honest, I understand exactly what you value. Dr. Kong Jihai smiled. You both just communicated the same core concepts. Home, family, meaningful work, but in ways the other could finally understand. The breakthrough continued, as both species began to recognize how their different styles had created decades of misunderstandings. But Dr. Kong Jihai knew understanding wasn't enough. They still needed to find solutions that both sides could accept without losing respect from their own people. There's another concept we need to discuss, Jung Soyoung interjected. On Earth, we call it saving face. It means finding ways to make the right choice while still looking strong and honorable. She activated a new holographic display showing the disputed Kepler Nebula. Both your species need this region to rebuild. But claiming victory over the other would just restart the cycle of conflict. What do you suggest, Stormwalker? Valinix asked. What if neither of you conquered the nebula? Jung Soyoung smiled. What if you both conquered something much more impressive? Dr. Kong Jihai joined the presentation. We propose framing this, not as territorial division, but as a joint expedition to transform the entire region into something unprecedented. The galaxy's first interspecies restoration project. Hive speaker, Kex3S, compound eyes focused intently. Continue. The Kethmori could be presented to your people as the leaders of the largest ecological restoration in galactic history, Jung Soyoung explained, converting a dead nebula into a thriving ecosystem. And the Zillinari would be the leaders of the most ambitious energy cultivation project ever attempted, Dr. Kong Jihoi added, creating sustainable Aurora Gardens on an unprecedented scale. Stormwalker Valinix pulsed thoughtfully. Both achievements would be impressive to our respective populations, more than impressive. Kextri clicked approvingly. Historic. The key, Jung Soyoung continued, is that neither species would be seen as giving up their claims. Instead, you'd both be choosing to do something even more ambitious together. Dr. Kong Jihai pulled up resource allocation charts. Shared technology, divided responsibilities, mutual benefits. Each species keeps their cultural identity while building something neither could achieve alone. For the first time in days, both delegates leaned forward with genuine interest instead of defensive posturing. This could work, Valinix admitted, if presented correctly to our councils. The Hive Mothers would be pleased with such an achievement. Kextri agreed. Jung 6 months later, the Kepler Nebula blazed with new life. What had once been a dead zone of cosmic dust now pulsed with the combined efforts of two species working in harmony. Massive Kethmori bioships moved gracefully between the stars, their organic hulls glowing as they cultivated vast fungal networks that stretched across light. Alongside them, zillenary energy vessels danced through space, their crews weaving aurora patterns that fed power to the growing ecosystem. Captain Kim Haeon stood on the observation deck of the Soul's Pride, watching the transformation through the viewport. His small ship looked tiny compared to the massive vessels of both species, but he felt immense pride. The first joint Kethmari Harvest Festival was scheduled for next week, and both species had insisted that humans be the guests of honor. Captain, his communications officer called out, "We're receiving a priority transmission from Earth." Kim Hyun made his way to the bridge as the holographic image of President Yoon Seo-jin materialized before him. Behind her, he could see the gleaming towers of New Seoul, Earth's new diplomatic capital that had been hastily constructed to handle the flood of alien visitors. Kim Hyun, the president, smiled. "I have some interesting news. The Galactic Council just voted unanimously to establish the Human Protocol as the standard method for interstellar conflict resolution." The Human Protocol? Kim Hyun raised an eyebrow. "That's what they're calling your approach. Emotional intelligence, cultural bridge building, and what they're terming food diplomacy. We've already received requests from 47 different species to mediate their disputes." Through the viewport, Kim Hyun watched as a group of young Kethmari and Zillenary worked together to install a new energy collector in the nebula's heart. They moved with easy familiarity, their different biologies complementing rather than conflicting. "There's more," President Yoon continued. "High Chancellor Vexstar wants to establish a permanent galactic diplomatic academy on Earth. He says, and I quote, 'The humans have taught us that the strongest bonds are forged not in conference rooms, but in kitchens.'" Kim Hyun laughed. "Ambassador Jong So-young would love that." She was currently on Alpha Centauri, helping resolve a trade dispute between the crystalline Veltari and the aquatic Nephilim using storytelling sessions and shared cooking demonstrations. "Captain," his tactical officer interrupted, "we're detecting multiple ship signatures dropping out of hyperspace. Looks like a full diplomatic convoy." The main screen lit up with incoming vessels. Kim Hyun recognized the elegant curves of art cruisers, the geometric bulk of Regalian transports, and the flowing organic shapes of vegan bi. All were displaying diplomatic flags. "Soul's Pride, this is Ambassador Kethanai of the Triangulum Collective," came a voice over the communication system. "We request permission to observe the Human Protocol in action. Our species have been at war for 6 centuries, and this is Fleet Singer Morden of the Spiral Confederation," added another voice. "We've heard remarkable stories about human mediation techniques." Kim Hyun found himself coordinating the arrival of dozen different species, all eager to learn from humanity's success. The small human ship became the center of a mini-fleet as alien vessels took positions around them. Dr. Kong Ji-hoi emerged from her research lab, datapad in hand. "Captain, I've been analyzing the psychological profiles of our new visitors. The Triangulum conflict appears to stem from competing religious beliefs, while the Spiral Confederation is dealing with resource allocation disputes." "Sounds familiar." Kim Hyun nodded. "Different species, same underlying issues. I've already started adapting our protocols," Dr. Kong Ji-hai continued. "The Triangulans have a tradition of ritual fasting, so shared cooking might not work, but they do have ceremonial tea preparation that serves similar social functions." On the bridge's communication screen, more species were requesting audience with the human mediators. The Andromedan peacekeepers wanted to establish a branch office. Near Earth, the Whirlpool Galaxy Alliance was offering to fund a new fleet of human diplomatic vessels. "Captain Kim," came a familiar voice as Hive speaker Kextri appeared on another communication channel. Her image showed her standing in what looked like a vast garden, surrounded by the soft glow of bioluminescent fungi. "We wanted to invite you to the dedication ceremony for the first human Memorial Grove." Memorial Grove? Kim Hyun was puzzled. Storm-Walker Valinix's energy form shimmered into view beside her. "We are creating a living monument to honor the species that taught us to find peace. Your people gave us back something we thought we had lost forever." "What's that?" Kim Hyun asked. "Hope," both aliens said simultaneously, then looked at each other and made sounds that Kim Hyun had learned to recognize as laughter. As the Soul's Pride prepared to escort the new diplomatic convoy to the next peace negotiation, Kim Hyun reflected on how much had changed. A year ago, humanity had been an unknown species on the edge of galactic civilization. Now, Earth was becoming the diplomatic heart of the galaxy. His thoughts were interrupted by another incoming transmission. This time, it was Otewu calling, from the new Human Diplomatic Corps headquarters in Geneva. Kim Haeon, we've got a situation developing in the Outer Rim. 3 species locked in a resource war, and conventional mediation has failed completely. Think you and your team are ready for another challenge? Kim Haeon looked out at the thriving ecosystem of the Kepler Nebula, where former enemies now worked together to build something beautiful. He thought about Jung So-young's grandmother's wisdom about sharing recipes, and Dr. Kong Ji-hai's insights about understanding different perspectives. Send us the coordinates, he said with a smile. It sounds like they could use a good meal and some honest conversation. As the Soul's Pride jumped to hyperspace, followed by its convoy of hopeful alien species, the stars themselves seemed to shine a little brighter across the galaxy. Other human diplomatic teams were already at work, armed with nothing more than empathy, creativity, and an endless supply of recipes from home. The age of human diplomacy had begun, and the universe would never be the same. The end.